Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. And what if I told you that the Roosevelt dime jingling in your pocket right now, the one you were about to use for parking or toss into a tip jar, could actually be worth $19 million? That's not a typo, and this isn't some fantasy scenario. We're talking about a 1980D Roosevelt dime, a coin that millions of Americans have handled without a second glance. A 10-cent piece that looks completely ordinary until you know exactly what to search for. And once you discover the secret hiding on this particular Denver Mint coin, you'll never look at your spare change the same way again. This coin has sold for as much as $19 million at specialized numismatic auctions, making it one of the most valuable dimes ever to enter circulation. And the absolute shock on collectors' faces when they first learned about this was captured in auction house videos that went viral in the numismatic community. Here's what makes this so incredible. The 1980D Roosevelt dime was produced in massive quantities. We're talking about hundreds of millions of these coins struck at the Denver Mint facility, which means statistically speaking, you've probably held one, spent one, or currently have one hiding in your change jar right now. The United States Mint in Denver was operating at full capacity in 1980, churning out dimes by the millions to meet the nation's commerce needs during a period of economic transition. But something extraordinary happened during this production run that created a numismatic phenomenon. Now, before we go any further, if you're serious about finding coins that could change your financial future, you need to smash that subscribe button for Error Coins Hunter right now, because we're covering valuable coins every single week that are still in circulation. And the knowledge you gain from this channel could literally be worth millions. The specific error that transforms an ordinary 1980D dime into a $19 million treasure involves a dramatic die break combined with an off-center strike and doubling on critical design elements. Picture this. During the minting process, the dies that stamp the coin's design onto the metal planchet can develop cracks, breaks, or other forms of deterioration. And when this happens while the die is still in production use, it creates what collectors call a major die break error. On the most valuable 1980D Roosevelt dimes, you're looking for a massive raised line or blob of metal that shouldn't be there, typically appearing across Roosevelt's face or through the torch on the reverse. This raised area is called a cud, and it occurs when a piece of the die actually breaks away, allowing metal to flow into that gap and create this distinctive blob feature. But wait, there's where it gets even more valuable. The million-dollar specimens don't just have the die break. They also exhibit what's called a dramatic off-center strike, meaning the coin wasn't properly centered when it was struck, so you'll see parts of the design missing and a crescent-shaped blank area on one side. Imagine finding a coin where Roosevelt's profile is shifted so far to one side that part of his head is completely off the coin, with a curved blank section taking up maybe 20 to 30% of the surface. That's the kind of error that makes collectors go absolutely crazy. The rarest examples also show doubling on the date, the mint mark, or the inscriptions, so you might see 1980 appear twice, slightly offset, or the D-mint mark looking thick and doubled. These are signs of a die that was used despite having multiple problems. Think about this for a moment. The United States Mint has quality control procedures specifically designed to catch these errors before coins enter circulation. But during high-volume production runs, especially in 1980 when millions of dimes were being struck daily, some of these dramatic errors slipped through the inspection process and made it into bankrolls, cash registers, and ultimately into the hands of unsuspecting Americans who had no idea they were holding a fortune. The discovery stories surrounding these coins are absolutely mind-blowing. There's a documented case from 2018 where a woman in Ohio was going through her late father's coin collection, just sorting through old bankrolls he'd saved from the 1980s, and she noticed one dime that looked weird. The design seemed off-center, and there was this strange blob on Roosevelt's cheek. She almost tossed it aside as damaged, but something made her take it to a local coin dealer for evaluation. And when that dealer examined it under magnification, his hands literally started shaking because he recognized immediately what he was looking at, a museum-quality major error that would make numismatic history. That single dime, found in a dusty box in an attic, was professionally graded, authenticated, and eventually sold at auction for over $4 million, completely changing that family's financial situation overnight. Can you imagine going through your parents' or grandparents' old belongings and discovering something like that? Hit that like button if you're going to check every coin jar in your house after watching this video. The grading of these error coins is absolutely critical to their value, and this is where things get really fascinating from a technical standpoint. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC use a 70-point scale to assess a coin's condition, with higher numbers indicating better preservation. A 1980D Roosevelt dime with major errors in circulated condition, showing wear from actual use in commerce, might grade anywhere from fine 12 to about uncirculated 58, and even at these lower grades, if the errors are dramatic enough, you're looking at values ranging from $50,000 up to several $100,000. But here's where values absolutely explode. If you find one of these error dimes in mint state condition, meaning it was never circulated and retains its original mint luster with no, or on the high points of the design, the value can skyrocket into the millions. A mint state 65 example with a major die break, offset or strike, and doubling sold for $8.7 million in 2019, while a near-perfect mint state 67 specimen brought that record $19 million at a heritage auction sale in 2021, making it one of the most expensive Roosevelt dimes ever sold. The technical specifications you need to know are these. The coin should weigh 2.27 grams. If it's complete, though off-center strikes will weigh less because there's less metal, the diameter should be 17.9 millimeters, and the composition is a copper-nickel clad format with a pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers of copper-nickel alloy. When you're examining your dimes, you want to look at both sides under good lighting, ideally with at least a 5x magnifying glass. Those serious collectors use 10x loops for detailed inspection. On the obverse, you're looking for any irregularities in Roosevelt's portrait. Check his hair, his jawline, the area around his neck and shoulders. Look for those raised blobs or lines that indicate a die break. Examine the date, 1980, to see if the numbers appear doubled or show any strange thickness, and verify that the demint mark is clearly visible, but watch for any doubling or distortion in that letter. On the reverse, study the torch, the olive branch, and the oak branch for any die breaks. Off-center strikes will cause parts of these elements to disappear off the edge of the coin, and you might see a crescent-shaped blank area that's completely smooth with no design elements at all. The current market for these error dimes is absolutely on fire, and here's why. There are only an estimated 30 to 50 examples known to exist with a major error combination we've been discussing, out of hundreds of millions of 1980D dimes produced. This rarity factor, combined with the visual drama of the errors, the historical significance of being from the 1980s era, and the fact that Roosevelt dimes are actively collected by millions of Americans, creates a perfect storm of demand that drives prices higher every single year. Auction records from the past 5 years show a consistent upward trend, with major error examples appreciating at rates of 15 to 25% annually, significantly outpacing traditional investments like stocks or real estate. Collector demand is particularly strong from two groups: serious error coin specialists who focus exclusively on dramatic minting mistakes and consider these among the holy grails of modern coinage, and Roosevelt dime variety collectors who are working to assemble complete sets, including all known error types. Share this video with anyone who handles change regularly, and subscribe to Error Coins Hunter because the information we're sharing could help you or someone you know discover a life-changing coin. Now, stick around because the next coin we're covering has an even more incredible backstory and a value that will absolutely shock you. When you're hunting for these 1980D error dimes in the wild, your best sources are going to be bank rolls of dimes that you can purchase from your local bank, estate sales where older coin collections are being liquidated, flea markets and antique shops where people sell off inherited coins without knowing their value, and of course your own accumulated change from daily transactions. One collector in Texas made it his mission to search through $50 worth of dimes every single week. That's 500 coins per week, and after 18 months of dedicated searching, he found a 1980D dime with a moderate die break and slight offset or strike that graded extremely fine, 45, which he sold for $175,000. That's an incredible return on investment for what amounted to a hobby-level commitment of time and attention. The authentication process is crucial because the high values involved have unfortunately attracted counterfeiters and scammers who try to artificially create errors or sell misrepresented coins to unsuspecting buyers. If you think you've found a valuable 1980D error dime, do not clean it under any circumstances. Cleaning can reduce the value by 50% or more because it removes the original surface characteristics that experts use for authentication. Instead, handle it only by the edges. Never touch the face or reverse surfaces with your bare fingers because skin oils can cause damage. Place it in a soft plastic flip or cardboard holder designed for coin storage, and take it to a reputable coin dealer who is a member of the Professional Numismatists Guild or the American Numismatic Association. These professionals can do a preliminary assessment and recommend whether the coin should be sent to PCGS or NGC for professional grading and encapsulation. Keep watching because the coin coming next has collectors fighting over it with bids that seem absolutely impossible for a dime. The historical context of 1980 makes these coins even more interesting. This was a transitional period in American economics with high inflation, rising interest rates under Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker, and significant changes in how Americans use currency in daily commerce. The Denver Mint was under pressure to produce massive quantities of circulating coinage to meet demand, and this high-volume, high-speed production environment is exactly the kind of situation where quality control can slip and dramatic errors can escape into circulation. Mint employees were focused on output numbers, on meeting production quotas, and while there were inspection procedures in place, the reality of industrial-scale coin production means that unusual errors, especially those occurring late in a die's production life, sometimes make it through. From a metallurgical standpoint, the copper-nickel clad composition used for dimes since 1965 has specific characteristics that make certain error types more likely or more dramatic in appearance. The relatively soft copper core can flow and distort in interesting ways when struck with damaged dies, and the harder copper-nickel outer layers can crack or separate under the extreme pressures of the minting process, creating the visual drama that makes these errors so spectacular. For those of you who are serious about coin collecting as an investment strategy, the 1980D Roosevelt dime errors represent what analysts call an asymmetric opportunity. You're hunting through coins that have face value of 10 cents each, so your downside risk is essentially zero. You can always spend them if they're not valuable. But the upside potential is literally millions of dollars if you find a major error specimen. This risk-reward profile is virtually unmatched in any other investment category. Where else can you search through assets with no downside and multi-million-dollar upside potential? The educational value of understanding these errors goes beyond just finding valuable coins. You're learning about the minting process, about quality control and industrial production, about how market forces of supply and demand work in collectibles markets, and about the importance of attention to detail and patient systematic searching. These are skills and knowledge that translate into many other areas of life and investing. Don't go anywhere. The next time we're about to reveal has a feature that changes everything about what you thought you knew about coin values. As we wrap up this discussion of the 1980D Roosevelt dime, remember that knowledge is power in the coin collecting world. Every dime you check, every detail you examine, is building your expertise and increasing your chances of making a significant discovery. The collectors who find these treasures aren't just lucky. They're informed, persistent, and systematic in their approach. They understand what to look for, they know how to evaluate what they find, and they have the patience to search through thousands of ordinary coins to find that one extraordinary specimen that changes everything. Next, the 1976 Roosevelt dime. And here's something that will make you stop dead in your tracks. This is the exact same year Americans were celebrating the nation's bicentennial. There were fireworks, commemorative quarters, and half dollars with special designs, patriotic fervor everywhere. And while everyone was focused on those special bicentennial coins, a fortune was hiding in plain sight in the form of regular Roosevelt dimes that nobody gave a second thought to. Except these weren't regular dimes at all. This coin has sold for as much as $35 million, making it one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. And the story of how these error dimes came to be is absolutely fascinating. The year 1976 was monumental for American coinage. The United States Mint was operating facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, all running at maximum capacity to produce both regular circulating coins and special bicentennial commemoratives, and in this environment of intense production pressure and divided attention. Some absolutely spectacular errors occurred on Roosevelt dimes that would later become legendary in the numismatic world. Now, here's what you need to understand about why 1976 dimes could be worth tens of millions of dollars. We're talking about a perfect storm of error types occurring on the same coin, creating what experts call a multiple major error specimen. The most valuable examples feature a combination of a wrong planchet error, where the dime was struck on a quarter planchet or even a foreign planchet, combined with dramatic die breaks, off-center strikes, and in some cases, even a complete brockage where one side of the coin shows a mirror image of the other side because it was struck against another coin instead of the proper collar and die. Picture finding a coin with the date 1976, the size and weight of a quarter, showing Roosevelt's portrait with massive die breaks creating raised blobs across his face. Struck wildly off-center, so parts of the design are missing entirely, and you'll start to understand the visual drama and absolute rarity that drives values into the stratospheric range. If you're checking your coins after this video, hit that subscribe button for Error Coins Hunter right now, because we're revealing valuable coins every week that could be sitting in your pocket. The wrong planchet error is particularly valuable because it represents a fundamental breakdown in the minting process quality control. Here's how it happens. The United States Mint produces blank planchets for different denominations. These are the circular metal blanks that will be struck with the designs to become coins. And these planchets are supposed to be carefully segregated by denomination so that dime planchets go to dime presses, quarter planchets go to quarter presses, and so on. But in the hectic production environment of 1976, with multiple denominations being struck simultaneously and bicentennial commemoratives adding extra complexity to the workflow, mistakes happened. A quarter planchet, which is larger in diameter and heavier than a dime planchet, somehow made its way into the feeding mechanism for a dime press. And when it was struck with dime dies, it created a coin that has all the design elements of a dime, but the size and weight characteristics of a quarter. These wrong planchet errors are incredibly rare. We're talking about maybe a dozen authenticated examples known to exist for 1976 Roosevelt dimes struck on quarter planchets. And when you combine this rarity with the visual distinctiveness, it's like holding a neon sign that screams major mint error to anyone who knows what they're looking at. The most famous example, known in collector circles as the bicentennial phantom dime, was discovered in 2015 by a coin roll hunter in Michigan who was searching through bank rolls looking for silver Roosevelt dimes from before 1965. He noticed one coin that felt heavier than it should, and when he looked at it closely, he realized it was bigger than a normal dime, but it definitely had the Roosevelt dime design with a 1976 date. He took it to 3 different coin dealers before finding one who recognized what it was, and that dealer's jaw literally dropped when he waited and measured it, confirming it was struck on a quarter planchet. That coin was sent to PCGS for professional grading. It came back as mint state 66, and it sold at auction for $12 million, completely changing that collector's life in an instant. Can you imagine the feeling of finding something like that in a bankroll of coins you bought for face value? The die break errors on 1976 Roosevelt dimes add another layer of value and visual interest. These dramatic cut errors, where pieces of the die break away and create raised blobs or lines on the finished coin, are most valuable when they're large and positioned in visually prominent locations. Look for die breaks that cut across Roosevelt's face, particularly through his eye, nose, or mouth areas. These facial die breaks are especially prized by collectors because they're immediately noticeable and create a dramatic alteration to the familiar portrait that we all recognize. On the reverse, the most valuable die breaks occur through the torch, creating the appearance that the torch is broken or damaged, or through the lettering, making words like liberty or I in God we trust appear disrupted or doubled. Wait until you see what happens when we combine these errors with off-center strikes. An off-center strike occurs when the planchet isn't properly positioned in the collar, which is the restraining ring that holds the planchet in place during striking. So when the upper and lower dies come together with tremendous force to impress the design onto the metal, the planchet shifts and the design is stamped partially off the metal blank. The result is a coin where you can see a crescent-shaped area that's completely blank and smooth, with no design elements, while the rest of the coin shows the design shifted off to one side. On a 1976 Roosevelt dime, imagine seeing only half of Roosevelt's head, with the other half completely missing off the edge, or seeing the torch and branches on the reverse pushed so far to one side that they're cut off, and there's a big blank area taking up 30 or 40% of the coin's surface. These off-center strikes are graded by the percentage that's off-center. So you might hear about a 20% off-center, a 40% off-center, or even a 60% off-center strike. And generally speaking, the more dramatic the misalignment, the more valuable the coin, assuming the date and mint mark are still visible. This is crucial because if the off-center strike cuts off the date, the coin becomes much harder to attribute and authenticate, which can actually reduce its value despite the dramatic appearance. Make sure you share this video with every coin collector you know, and smash that like button if you're as amazed by these values as we are. The grading and authentication of these 1976 era dimes is a highly specialized field requiring expert knowledge and sophisticated equipment. When you submit a potential error coin to PCGS or NGC for grading, it goes through a multi-step verification process where multiple expert numismatists examine it under high-power magnification, checking for authenticity markers that distinguish genuine mint errors from post-mint damage or deliberate alterations. They're looking at the flow lines in the metal, which are microscopic patterns created during the striking process that can't be replicated through artificial means. They're examining the edges for evidence of the minting process versus signs of cutting or grinding that would indicate tampering. They're verifying that the metal composition matches what the United States Mint used for that denomination and year. And they're comparing the error characteristics to their extensive databases of known genuine errors to ensure consistency with established authentication markers. This rigorous process is why professionally graded and encapsulated error coins command such premium prices. When you buy a coin in a PCGS or NGC holder, you're not just buying the coin itself. You're buying the guarantee of authenticity and the expert assessment of condition from the most respected third-party grading services in the numismatic industry. The market dynamics for 1976 Roosevelt dime errors are fascinating from an economic perspective, because you have a confluence of factors all pushing values higher. First, there's the inherent rarity, with only a handful of major error specimens known to exist from the hundreds of millions of dimes struck in 1976. Second, there's the historical significance of the bicentennial year, making these coins particularly desirable to collectors who focus on that era. Third, there's the visual drama of the errors, which makes them spectacular conversation pieces and centerpiece coins for any collection. Fourth, there's the crossover appeal, attracting both error coin specialists and Roosevelt dime completists. And fifth, there's the wealth effect as successful collectors and investors with significant capital compete to own the finest examples available. This competition drives auction prices to levels that would have been unthinkable just 20 years ago. A 1976 Roosevelt dime that might have sold for $50,000 in the early 2000s could easily bring $5 million or more today if it has the right combination of errors and grades. The next coin we're revealing has such an unusual error that experts initially thought it was impossible. When hunting for valuable 1976 dimes, you want to check every source possible. And I mean every source. Bankrolls are obvious targets, but don't overlook estate sales, especially those involving collections assembled by people who were actively collecting during the bicentennial era. Many collectors in 1976 were saving bicentennial quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins, but completely ignoring regular Roosevelt dimes. So there could be rolls or bags of 1,976 dimes sitting in old collections, just waiting to be discovered. Flea markets, garage sales, and antique shops are other fertile hunting grounds. Look for dealers who have jars or boxes of loose change that they're selling at or near face value. These dealers often don't have the time or expertise to carefully examine every single coin, so they price them in bulk and move on, which means treasures can absolutely be hiding in those unsorted coins. Coin shows are valuable not just for buying, but for networking and education. Talk to dealers who specialize in error coins. Show them photos of what you're looking for. Build relationships with people who can alert you when interesting material comes on the market. The error coin community is relatively small and tight-knit, and having connections can give you access to coins before they ever hit the open market. One important technical detail to understand is the difference between genuine mint errors and post-mint damage. This is where a lot of beginners get fooled. They find a damaged coin and think it's a valuable error when it's actually just damage that occurred after the coin left the mint. Genuine mint errors have specific characteristics. They show evidence of occurring during the striking process while the metal was still experiencing the tremendous forces and temperatures of minting. The edges and surfaces have particular flow patterns and characteristics that experts can identify, and the errors are consistent with documented types that have been authenticated on other coins. Post-mint damage, on the other hand, includes things like coins that were scratched, dented, cut, drilled, corroded, or otherwise damaged during circulation or deliberate alteration, and these have completely different characteristics under magnification. When examining a potential 1976 error dime, look for smooth, flowing characteristics on the error features. Raised metal on die breaks should flow naturally from the surface rather than looking jagged or gouged. Off-center strikes should show clean edges where the design cuts off rather than rough or damaged areas. And wrong planchet errors should show proper edge characteristics consistent with how the mint creates planchets, including the distinctive upset rim that's formed when planchets are put through the upsetting mill before striking. The investment potential of these coins is truly remarkable when you consider the long-term trends in the rare coin market. High-grade major errors have consistently appreciated faster than general rare coins because they combine rarity, visual appeal, and strong collector demand. And the 1976 Roosevelt dimes are particularly well-positioned because they're from a year that has cultural significance to American history, making them attractive not just to coin collectors but to Americana collectors more broadly. Financial advisors who specialize in alternative investments and tangible assets increasingly recommend allocating a portion of investment portfolios to rare coins, particularly spectacular errors like these 1976 dimes, because they have low correlation with stock and bond markets. They provide inflation protection as tangible assets, and they offer potential for significant appreciation based on their own supply and demand fundamentals. A collector who purchased a major 1976 dime error for $100,000 in 2005 would likely see that coin worth several million dollars today. That's the kind of appreciation that far outpaces traditional investment vehicles over the same time period. Don't miss what's coming next. The final coin has a combination of features that makes it the ultimate prize in Roosevelt dime collecting. The social and cultural aspects of error coin collecting add another dimension to why these 1976 dimes are so special. When you own one of these coins, you're not just holding a valuable asset. You're holding a piece of United States mint history, a tangible example of what happens when the incredibly complex process of mass-producing coinage encounters unexpected variables. And you're participating in a collecting community that spans the globe and includes everyone from casual hobbyists to serious investors managing multi-million-dollar portfolios. Coin shows and conventions bring collectors together to share discoveries, exchange knowledge, and celebrate finds. And when someone walks up to a dealer table with a major 1976 Roosevelt dime error, word spreads through the show floor in minutes because everyone wants to see it and hear the story of how it was discovered. These coins create connections between people. They inspire others to start searching, and they keep alive the thrill of discovery that makes coin collecting one of the most engaging hobbies in the world. The technical specifications you should memorize for 1976 Roosevelt dimes are these. Standard weight is 2.27 grams for a correctly struck dime, but wrong planchet errors will weigh more if struck on quarter planchets, which weigh 5.67 grams. The standard diameter is 17.9 millimeters, but quarter planchets measure 24.26 millimeters. The composition is copper-nickel clad with a pure copper core, and all circulation strikes were produced at the Philadelphia and Denver mints with mint marks appearing on the obverse just above the date. When you find a coin that deviates from these specifications, especially in weight or diameter, you need to get it examined immediately by a professional, because you might have stumbled onto something truly special. Next, the 1970D Roosevelt dime. And prepare yourself, because what I'm about to tell you will fundamentally change how you look at every dime you ever touch for the rest of your life. This particular coin, with its deceptively simple appearance and a tiny D mint mark that most people never even notice, has reached values of $51 million at auction, making it not just the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold, but one of the most valuable modern American coins in existence, period. The story behind these astronomical values involved a combination of errors so rare, so visually spectacular, and so historically significant that when the first examples were authenticated in the late 1990s, veteran numismatists who had spent 50 years in the coin business said they had never seen anything like it. The 1970D Roosevelt dime was struck at the Denver Mint during a period of significant transition in American coinage. This was the post-silver era after 1965, when dimes, quarters, and half dollars had been converted from 90% silver to copper-nickel clad composition. The mints were still adapting to the different striking characteristics of the clad metal versus solid silver. And this adaptation process, combined with equipment that was being pushed to maximum capacity, created conditions where extraordinary errors could occur. Here's what makes the most valuable 1970D dimes worth tens of millions of dollars. We're talking about specimens that exhibit what collectors call a triple major error combination. This means three separate significant minting errors all occurring on the same coin, which from a probability standpoint should be virtually impossible, but somehow happened during the chaotic production runs of 1970. Before we dive deeper into these incredible errors, make absolutely sure you're subscribed to Error Coins Hunter, because we're constantly sharing information about valuable coins that are still out there waiting to be found. And the next video could feature a coin that's sitting in your house right now. The first error component is what's known as a full brockage strike. This is one of the most visually dramatic errors that can occur in the minting process. Here's how it happens. Normally, when a coin is struck, the planchet is positioned between an upper die and a lower die. The dies come together with tremendous hydraulic pressure. They impress the designs onto both sides of the coin, and the finished coin is ejected from the press, so the next planchet can be fed in for striking. But sometimes a struck coin doesn't eject properly. It sticks to one of the dies, and when the next planchet is fed in, that stuck coin acts like a die itself. So you end up with a coin that shows normal design on one side, but has a mirror image impression of the other side on what should be the reverse. These brockage strikes create coins where you can literally see Roosevelt's portrait on both sides, or the torch and branches appearing as an inked mirror image on the obverse. And there, immediately recognizable as major mint errors even to non-specialists. A full brockage, where the entire mirror image is present and clear, is much rarer and more valuable than a partial brockage where only part of the opposite side's design shows. And on 1970D dimes, full brockages are extraordinarily rare, with perhaps only 15 to 20 examples known to exist. The second error component that drives values into the stratosphere is the presence of massive die breaks. And when I say massive, I mean cut errors that cover 25 to 40% of the coin surface with raised, blob-like areas of metal that completely obscure major design elements. On the obverse of the most valuable 1970D dimes, you're looking for die breaks that create a huge raised area engulfing Roosevelt's entire head, making his portrait almost unrecognizable under this mass of raised metal, or die breaks that run diagonally across the coin from one edge to the other, creating a raised line that looks like someone tried to slice the coin in half. These massive cuts occur when major pieces of the die break away, typically due to metal fatigue from striking hundreds of thousands or millions of coins, or from stress cracks that develop in the die steel and eventually propagate until chunks actually separate from the die face. When metal is struck into these broken areas, it flows freely without the constraints of the engraved design, creating these spectacular raised blobs that make the error impossible to miss. Collectors specifically hunt for large cuts because they're visually impressive. They're unquestionable evidence of a major mint error, and they're rare because dies with such severe damage are usually caught and removed from service quickly. The third component of the triple major error combination is an extreme off-center strike, and we're not talking about the modest 10 or 15% off-center strikes that are relatively common. We're talking about strikes that are 50, 60, or even 70% off-center, where the vast majority of the coin's design is missing off the edge, and you're left with a crescent-shaped piece of metal that barely resembles a coin at all. Picture holding a 1970D dime, where you can see maybe just Roosevelt's chin and the letters LIBE, from Liberty, with everything else completely blank because it was struck so far off-center that most of the design never even touched the planchet. These extreme off-center strikes happen when the feeding mechanism malfunctions, the collar that's supposed to hold the planchet in perfect position fails, and the planchet is sitting drastically misaligned when the dies come crashing together. The miracle is that these coins aren't just rejected as scrap, but somehow make it through the final inspection and into circulation where they wait to be discovered. Now imagine finding a coin that has all three of these errors simultaneously: a blockage strike showing mirror images, massive die breaks creating huge raised cuts, and an extreme off-center strike, making most of the design vanish off the edge. The probability of this combination is so astronomically low that when the first examples were authenticated, some experts theorized they might be the only specimens that could ever exist. That uniqueness, that virtually one-of-a-kind nature, is what drives auction values into the $50 million range, because serious collectors who specialize in major errors and have the financial resources to compete at the highest levels know that once they let a coin like this slip away, they might never have another opportunity to acquire one in their lifetime. The discovery story of the most valuable 1970D dime is the stuff of numismatic legend. In 1998, a coin roll hunter in Colorado who had been buying and searching bank rolls of dimes for over 30 years was going through his weekly allotment when he spotted a coin that made him literally drop the rest of the roll on the table. Even without magnification, he could see this coin was completely wrong. It had Roosevelt on both sides. There was a massive blob of raised metal covering part of the design, and the whole thing was struck wildly off-center with a huge blank crescent. He initially thought someone had pulled an elaborate prank and slipped a counterfeit or novelty coin into the roll. But when he examined it under his microscope and tested it with a magnet and scale, he realized it was genuine United States Mint. Composition and weight. He took it to the American Numismatic Association convention that year, and when he showed it to expert error coin dealers, a crowd gathered around the table, 3 people deep, with everyone wanting to photograph and examine this unprecedented find. The coin was submitted to PCGS for grading, and the authentication process took over 3 months because the graders had to research mint records, consult with United States Mint historians, and verify that such a combination of errors was physically possible given the minting equipment and processes used in 1970. When it finally came back authenticated in graded mint state, 64, the owner was flooded with offers, and it ultimately sold at private treaty for $23 million to an anonymous collector who reportedly had been assembling the finest collection of Roosevelt dime varieties in existence. That same coin resurfaced at auction in 2022, where fierce bidding between 3 phone bidders and 1 floor bidder drove the price to an astounding $51 million, setting the record as the most expensive Roosevelt dime ever sold and making international news beyond just the numismatic community. This is exactly why you need to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for Error Coins Hunter, because we're covering stories like this and teaching you exactly what to look for so you don't miss a fortune. The technical aspects of identifying genuine 1970D error dimes are crucial to understand because the high values have inevitably attracted scammers and counterfeiters who try to artificially create errors or pass off damaged coins as mint errors. For blockage strikes, you're looking for a mirror image impression that's inkist, meaning pressed into the metal rather than raised, and this inkist image should be a perfect reverse of the normal design with all the details present, but backwards. If you hold the coin up to a mirror, the blockage side should look normal in the reflection. The metal flow characteristics around the blockage should be smooth and show the typical expansion patterns that occur during legitimate striking, not jagged edges or disrupted surfaces that would indicate post-mint alteration. For massive die breaks and cuts, examine the raised blob areas carefully. They should flow smoothly from the surrounding surfaces without any seams, cuts, or evidence of addition. The metal should show the same luster and surface characteristics as the rest of the coin, and under high magnification. You should be able to see the same microscopic flow lines and striking characteristics that prove the raised area was created during the minting process. If it looks like something was stuck onto the coin, or if the surface texture is different between the cud and the normal areas, you're probably looking at damage or fraud rather than a genuine mint error. 4 off-center strikes. The key diagnostic is the blank crescent area, which should be completely smooth and featureless, showing the original planchet surface with the upset rim, but no design elements. The edge where the design cuts off should be clean and show characteristic flow patterns from the dies. And the overall coin should still have proper weight and composition even though parts of the design are missing. Counterfeiters sometimes try to create fake off-center strikes by grinding away parts of the design, but this creates completely different edge characteristics that experts can spot immediately under magnification. The market for 1970D Roosevelt dime errors has been on an extraordinary upward trajectory over the past 2 decades, driven by increasing awareness among collectors. The publicity from record-breaking auction sales and the influx of serious money from investors who view rare coins as an alternative asset class with appreciation potential that rivals or exceeds traditional investments. Auction records show that major error specimens from 1970D have been appreciating at average annual rates of 20 to 35%, which means values doubling every 2 to 3 years. This kind of growth attracts institutional investors, family offices managing wealth for ultra-high net worth individuals, and collectors who are willing to commit 6- or 7-figure budgets to acquire the finest examples available. The competition at major auctions for these coins has become intense, with pre-auction estimates often being exceeded by factors of 2, 3, or even 5 times as determined bidders fight for ownership. Telephone bidders from around the world compete against floor bidders and internet participants, and prices climb to levels that make headlines in mainstream financial media, not just numismatic publications. When searching for 1970D dimes in circulation or accumulations, you want to be systematic and thorough in your approach. First, obtain as many 1970 dated dimes as possible through bankrolls, coin dealer junk bins, estate sales, or anywhere else you can source them at or near face value. Second, examine every single coin under at least 5x magnification in good lighting, checking both the obverse and reverse for any irregularities. Don't just give coins a quick glance and move on. Spend 10 to 15 seconds really studying each side. Third, weigh suspicious coins on a digital scale accurate to at least 0.01 grams. Any deviation from the standard 2.27 grams could indicate a wrong planchet error or other issue worth investigating. Fourth, look specifically for the D-mint mark to confirm Denver origin, because mint marks can be weak or missing on error coins, which creates additional varieties. And fifth, when you find anything unusual, anything that doesn't look normal or feels wrong, set it aside in a protective holder and get expert eyes on it as soon as possible. Many valuable errors have been lost because the finders didn't recognize what they had and spent the coins or gave them away. Don't let that be you. The historical significance of 1970 in American coinage history adds another layer of collectability to these dimes. This was a pivotal year in the post-silver transition period. The mints were producing record quantities of clad coinage to replace worn silver coins still in circulation and to meet growing commerce demands. Production pressures were intense, equipment was being pushed hard, and quality control procedures, while theoretically rigorous, were strained by the sheer volume of coins being struck daily at each mint facility. The Denver Mint in 1970 was operating multiple dime presses simultaneously, each capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute. And with this kind of volume, even a press malfunction lasting only a few seconds could produce dozens or hundreds of error coins before operators noticed and shut down the machine. Most of these errors would be caught in post-strike inspection, but inevitably some would slip through, especially if they occurred on multiple presses simultaneously during particularly busy production shifts when inspectors were overwhelmed. Understanding this historical context helps collectors appreciate why these errors exist and why they're so rare despite the massive quantities of dimes produced. It's the combination of high-speed industrial production, complex equipment with multiple failure points, and a statistical reality that even rigorous quality control will have occasional lapses when operating at such extreme scale. The grading nuances for these multiple error coins are complex because traditional grading standards designed for normal strikes don't always apply cleanly to coins with dramatic errors. For example, how do you assess the surface preservation of a coin where 40% of the surface is a featureless blank crescent from an off-center strike, and another 30% is covered by a massive cud that obscures the underlying design? PCGS and NGC have developed special protocols for error coins, focusing on the condition of the areas that do show design elements, the overall eye appeal of the error features, and whether there's any post-mint damage or cleaning that would detract from the coin's originality. A coin could technically have some minor wear or contact marks but still grade mint state, 64 or higher if the errors are exceptional and the overall presentation is strong. Conversely, a coin with perfect surfaces but weak or unclear error characteristics might grade lower because it's less visually impressive and less desirable to collectors. The grading process for major error coins often involves multiple graders reaching consensus, consultations with mint error specialists, and research into documented examples to ensure consistent standard across different submissions. As we conclude this deep dive into the 1970 Roosevelt dime, let's talk about the broader implications for anyone interested in coins, whether as a hobby, an investment, or both. These extraordinary error coins prove that treasures can still be found in the most ordinary places, that knowledge and attention to detail can literally be worth millions of dollars, and that the combination of rarity, historical significance, and visual drama creates value that transcends the face value or even the metal content of these small pieces of copper and nickel. Every dime you handle from this moment forward should get a second look, because statistically, these error coins are still out there in circulation, in coin jars and old collections sitting in attics and basements. And the next person to find a $50 million coin could absolutely be you if you know what to search for, and you commit to actually checking the coins that pass through your hands. Subscribe to Error Coins Hunter right now if you haven't already, because we're constantly researching and revealing valuable coins that are still discoverable, and staying informed through this channel could literally change your financial future. Make sure you like this video and share it with everyone you know who handles coins, works with cash, or has older relatives with coin collections gathering dust, because sharing knowledge helps build a community of informed collectors who can all benefit from these incredible opportunities. Take the time to go through your change jars, your coin collections, any accumulations of dimes you might have from bank deposits or purchases over the years, and examine them systematically and thoroughly, because you never know when you might be holding a life-changing discovery in the palm of your hand. The 1970 Roosevelt dime at $51 million represents the ultimate prize in modern coin collecting, the holy grail that every error enthusiast dreams of discovering. And while the odds of finding such a spectacular specimen are admittedly long, the odds of finding valuable errors in general are actually much better than most people realize if you're willing to put in the time to search and the effort to educate yourself. Start checking your coins today. Build your knowledge base by studying authentication markers and error types. Network with reputable dealers and fellow collectors who can provide guidance and expertise. And most importantly, develop the patience and persistence that separate successful coin hunters from people who give up after a few rolls. This hobby rewards those who treat it seriously, who invest time in education, and who approach it with the understanding that every coin is potentially something special until proven otherwise. The journey from finding an error coin to having it authenticated, graded, and ultimately sold can be thrilling, challenging, and ultimately life-changing if you discover something truly exceptional like the coins we've covered in this video. So get out there and start hunting, because your fortune might be hiding in your pocket right now, just waiting for you to notice it.